Welcome to 247 Real Talk. I'm your host, Julian Perry. It's a pleasure to be here with you once again for the 247 Real Talk podcast. I really wish that you had, and I'm hoping that you had a fantastic week since we last spoke. I had a great week. Started hybrid work schedule at my job, so I get to work 2 days from home, which is amazing for quality of life. And we've had a few warm days, albeit some rain today, but I think today we actually hit 60 degrees. And even though the bottom's supposed to fall out tomorrow and it's supposed to get cold for a while, we are getting glimpses of spring, and I'm ready and raring to go. So I hope you're enjoying the same wherever you are. I know that I'm speaking to people all over the world. And I want to thank each and every one of you for subscribing to the 247 Real Talk podcast. Also thank all of you who are liking, who are commenting, who are sending me emails, who are sharing, and who are subscribing. Your sharing and subscribing are so important to this channel because I fund everything that goes on here, and my hope for the future is to fund even more so we can help others in need. So every little step goes a long way in keeping this podcast alive. This week I'm going to talk about the healthcare industry. Now, the last time I spoke about it, I have a couple of supporters, staunch supporters, and I remember one specifically, a doctor, and she always sort of stiffens up and cringes when she first hears I'm going to talk about the healthcare industry. The last time I spoke about it, she was happy. It was a positive spin. This time, Doc, it's not. I'm going after them, and I'm going after them hard because some things I experienced myself tells me that we're in trouble if we don't pay attention. So sit back, relax, and you know what? I'll be right back. So welcome back to the 247 Real Talk podcast. Again, I'm the host, Julian Perry. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you for another episode of this podcast. Like I said, this week I'm going to talk a little bit about personal experiences with the healthcare industry and some observances of mine and things that we need to do and they need to do better. So rather than take someone else's story, I had my own interesting interactions, and I'm going to share them with you. But first and foremost, I want to say this. People who go into healthcare, we understand that like the prescription companies, companies that make your medication, Pfizer and all these companies are multi-billion-dollar companies. And they've gone from caring about healthcare to caring about money. The whole premise of healthcare is to save lives. But what these people have done now is use a capitalist approach and made it so much so about money that they don't care about the individual or the care that they offer. On this week's episode, I am going to call some names of some companies I dealt with personally, and I'm going to call them out. Because after what I experienced, after something my wife experienced, I think enough is enough. So let's start with the longer story first, because I don't want to be here too long on this podcast, on this episode. Quite a few years ago, I was diagnosed with sleep apnea. I remember going to do the test, and I think at one point when I did the first test, they said that I stopped breathing about 81 times during an hour. That's pretty serious, because people die from sleep apnea. So they recommended a CPAP machine. The insurance covered it, no problem. And I think the insurance said that every 5 years they cover a new machine. So I would want to say just before COVID, so let's say maybe 2019, I got a new machine. In 2022, I received a notification, I think, from both. Actually, in 2022, I noticed that the machine I was using is made by ResMed. I noticed that I started to smell at times this burning, rubbery burning scent. And I would turn the machine off for a while and turn it back on, and it would, sometimes it would go away. Sometimes I would stop using it for the night. But I also figured, well, maybe the machine is, now it has been 3 years old and maybe it's going bad. Maybe a month or two after that started, I got notification, I think, from both Apria and ResMed that ResMed had done a massive recall of these machines. It turns out that there was some material inside the machine that would eventually heat up and burn and give off fumes that were, I guess, toxic, a health hazard. This is the middle of COVID now, or we were 3/4 way through COVID, but it was still in COVID. The Apria contacted me and said, look, we have to swap out your machine. They called me in to swap out my machine, and they gave me a machine. When I got home and plugged it in, it was utter garbage. It wasn't by ResMed, and it was nothing close to what I had. I complained a few times. Eventually, they had one of their doctors call me, and I explained to them the issues I was having with the machine. The doctor said, okay, I will take care of your case, and I will call you back. This happens with Apria a lot. I won't go into those instances tonight because I want to focus on something specifically, but the doctor never called back. I don't remember all the steps I took, but eventually I got another call. I set it up. They said, come in, we're going to swap your machine. I went in. They swapped my machine, meaning they took my machine and they gave me a replacement machine. Remember, this is about a recall. Fast forward to, this was I think September 2022. Fast forward to October 2023, which is now just 5 months ago. I get a letter in the mail saying they're trying to contact my doctor to bill for the machine. To bill for the machine? Really? So I contacted Apria and they said, yes, we took your machine. The insurance company, they said we at the time have been paying a monthly rental, and now the machine has to be purchased. Well, that seemed odd to me, and I got to tell you, even though I never got to address that part to this point, it still seems odd. It seemed odd to me because if there's a recall, if I manufacture something and there's a massive recall because I have a health hazard, I have to fix it or replace it at my cost. So one of my concerns was the fact that they wanted my insurance company to pay for it because, it's not coming out of my pocket, but the issue to me is that's why our insurance premiums keep going sky high, right? Because insurance companies at times are paying for things that they shouldn't. In this case, I thought they shouldn't. Nevertheless, I said, okay, I spoke to my doctor. My doctor said there was nothing else he needed to do. But then what happened? I got a call from Apria. I called them back. And they said, again, we're trying to get a hold of your doctor. I said, well, I spoke to my doctor. There's no issue there. He said, well, we're unable to get to bill the insurance. They're not paying for the machine. They're not providing us with what's called a prior authorization. And if that's the case, you're going to have to pay for the machine. I said, me? I'm not paying for the machine. I got my machine swapped out on a recall. As far as I'm concerned, this is between you and the insurance company. I was a little worried, so on January 11th, I called my insurance company, Emblem Health. Spoke to a young lady by name, I think her name was Andrea. She was very helpful. She promised to call Apria and straighten it out and call me back by the end of the week. I think it was whatever day January 11th was, I can't remember, but the fact is that 3 days later, Andrea called me back and told me she spoke with Apria and that they would submit the bill and the insurance company would pay the bill, no questions asked. At one point when I was on the phone with Emblem, they put me on hold. They spoke to the managers. They said, yes, you're covered. There's not a problem here. Then I got another call from Apria saying, hey, we're not getting the insurance company to pay for this. So I said to them, I said, look, the insurance company called you, they spoke with your people, and this is who called, this is when they called, and this is what was said. The gentleman says, okay, I'm going to escalate it to the right team. Don't worry about it. About a week and a half ago, I get a bill in the mail for $694.70 something cents. And here's what the bill says. This is from Apria. And the bill says, basically, the insurance company has paid their part. This is your balance. Are you serious? First of all, that's almost the entire cost of the machine. It was one of those tough days I was having because two bills came on the same day, and I'm going to tell you about the second one after this. But I was irritated. And I thought to myself, in a time coming out of COVID, we've learned so much about people and their struggles and mental health and something called a stressor. After having so many calls with the insurance company and with Apria to get this bill, my blood pressure went up immediately. For me, it was a stressor. And I remember reflecting on the amount of episodes I've done on people, for instance, who committed suicide and talked about stressors and talked about external forces that act upon people unfairly when they're at the brink, they're at the edge. And I thought to myself, I could imagine someone who was going through hell getting a bill like this, when this had nothing to do with them. This had nothing to do with me. I gave them a machine. I got a machine. It was a recall. So this past Tuesday, I called Apria. I spoke to a young lady by the name of Paula, I get her last name. And she explained to me again that they tried to bill the insurance company, and the insurance company did not give them a prior authorization, and therefore they're billing me. So my first thought was, so you're having a problem getting to a place with the insurance company so that they will pay for something that I am fully covered for. So your solution as a big company as Apria is to send the bill to your patient. Really? That's the best you can do. I was so frustrated. I think I was on the phone for maybe half an hour with Paula. Actually, I was on the phone with someone else, and we got cut off. And then the second call was to Paula, but luckily the first person had put the notes in the system. So I'd now spent about a half an hour or more on the phone with Apria. And I said to this Paula, don't hang up. I'm going to call Emblem Health right now. And I did a two-way call on my merge call, or add and merge, on my cell phone. And I got this young lady at Emblem. And I'm so thankful for her. I'm so sorry. Sometimes I'm not good with names. And I didn't get her name. And I'm so sorry because I would love to give her a big shout out. So the three of us on the phone, I explained to this woman at Emblem what's going on. She spoke to Paula. Paula says, look, we found this claim and you guys are not paying for it. So then the woman at Emblem Health calls Evicor. She gets Evicor added to the call. So there are now four of us on this call. On my cell phone, by the way, which is pretty difficult to hear after you've got a four-way call. Evicor apparently is the go-between the vendors and Emblem. And they do, I guess, the medical part and the prior authorizations or whatever. So Evicor looks in the system. They talk with Paula back and forth. They get some dates of when I turned in my machine and blah, blah, blah. And then the woman at Emblem Health, I'm not sure if she did this initially for my benefit or if she did this to defend Emblem because Apria was pointing fingers at Emblem. But she started doing her due diligence on the phone. And she went through the request for prior authorization from Apria. And she says, well, it says here that it was denied because there are no clinical documents. There's no sleep test. There's no proof of sleep apnea. So I said, excuse me, may I say something? She said, yes. I said, there was no need for any of that. This was a recall. I had already done all the sleep studies. I was actively using my machine. My use was interrupted by this massive recall nationwide. I gave them a machine. I got a machine. And as she continues going, she says, well, I don't see any clinicals there. She says, wait a minute. Apria, are you there? Paula? She says, yes. This is your fault. Of course, Apria's like, what do you mean? We submitted the claim. She says, no. It clearly says when you submit a request for prior authorization, there's a section that says, is this prior authorization for a recall? Specifically as a part of the section. So obviously, based on the recall, the prior authorization process had added, is this for a recall? And she said, Apria, whoever submitted the claim on your behalf answered no. They went back and forth for a while. Then Paula put us all on hold. She spent about between 5 and 10 minutes on hold, came back and says, okay, I escalated this to the claims department. I spoke with them. They're going to investigate this. And hear this part, Mr. Perry, you can call us back in 3 to 5 days. Now, I haven't called them. I haven't called them because let's slow this down for a second. Apria was not getting the insurance company to pay for something that they knew was fully covered, because they even looked in their own system and said, you should be fully covered. Their solution, rather than to go back and look through the process to see why they're not getting the prior authorization, was to throw the bill at their patient in an effort for them to get paid at the patient's expense, at the patient's financial expense, at the patient's mental stress expense. It didn't matter to them. And then it turns out I, the patient, had to initiate a call with the insurance company, which they should have done. And it seems to me, if I was able to initiate this call and allow 4 people to have a conversation that came to that where we found the issue, that Apria could have done this months ago. Thankful so much to this lady at Emblem who did her due diligence in defending maybe the insurance company, and as a result in defending me. But after all of that, after Apria putting me through all this stress and throwing this approximately $700 bill at me, she does not say, I escalate this to our claims department and we will call you back in 3 to 5 days. She says, no, you have to call us. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever tried calling these companies, and you got to go through prompt after prompt after prompt after entering information. And sometimes when you're on a cell phone, the system says, I didn't get that. Can you repeat it? It's almost a system designed to make you want to hang up. But after all of this, they couldn't even offer the decency, the common courtesy to say, Mr. Perry, we'll look into this. Emblem is saying we submitted the claim incorrectly. We will check to make sure that it's done correctly. We will call you back with the results. No, it put it on me to call them back. Suffice to say, I have not. I will say one thing to you, my listeners, and to whomever you share this podcast with. And ultimately, I hope you all have friends in the medical industry that you can share this podcast with, even if it's your first time sharing, so that they can keep sharing and this can propagate in between all of these companies that offer services in every different area. Read my lips. I have no intention of paying this bill. I never had and I never will. Not because I don't pay my bills, but because I refuse to be bullied by big companies who feel that rather than do their due diligence or train their staff or make sure they do quality assurance in the healthcare industry, you throw the bill at the patient so you can get paid rather than do your due diligence, rather than do your job properly. Someone within Apria messed up, and the chain of supervision in Apria and quality control, after seeing this repetitiously happening with one case and understanding from their own system even that it should be covered, no one sat down and said, before we send this gentleman a bill, because if you're sending me a bill, you're basically saying the insurance company is not paying and you're not eligible. The bill is even, I would almost say malicious. I'm malicious with intent because it said the insurance company has satisfied their part, this is your part, which is an absolute lie. So now, The last thing that was said on that call was, Mr. Perry, you can disregard the bill. Now understand something. I looked down at my phone when the call finally ended after I had profusely thanked the woman from Emblem Health for not only due diligence but actually caring enough to fight and to find the issue that Apria should have found within their own system. I looked down my phone and I had spent 1 hour and 26 minutes on the phone. Now this was the middle of the day, and I was working and doing other things and listening to the call and answering emails, doing my job. How many people can do that? And you know what happens, right? Most people cannot spend 1 hour and 26 minutes. Most people can't go through the process I was fortunate enough to go through. So what these companies do, they bill you. They bill you a couple or 2 or 3 times to satisfy their thresholds. And then they send that bill to the collections agency, knowing fully well that one of the results of that could be damage to your credit, which is a ripple effect that affects everything else in your life. Ability to purchase a house, ability to get credit for anything else, your own integrity as a person. But they don't care, and this was their mistake. Why are they in their business of healthcare and patients if they can't apply a methodology, an approach that makes sure that when you have to throw something like a bill or a consequence to a patient, you have done everything else in your power to make sure you've dotted all your I's, crossed all your T's, and you've made sure even then that the impact is minimal to the patient. I remember going to a CVS one time, and I can't remember how much the prescription was, but the guy behind the counter says, hold on, I think we got a coupon. This guy went and got a coupon to make sure that the financial impact to me was minimal. So I'm calling out Apria on this. You have to do better. You're one of the major players in the CPAP business. That's a huge medical business these days. And all the companies out there who want to do due diligence, who want to rival Apria for the position, this may be your opening. I'm putting Apria on blast because this happened to me. This is not hearsay. And it brought me unnecessary stress, discomfort, and unhappiness at that specific moment of that specific day. I remember me saying to you that it was sort of a double whammy because I got 2 bills in the mail. So I have severe allergies. Severe. Not severe like the peanut allergy that will kill you in 3 minutes, but severe enough that the doctors feel that whenever possible and affordable, I should have an EpiPen. Now, I've had one every year for maybe the last 5 years. Never had to use it. Never. I've had allergic reactions. I've had some bad ones. I should have put my picture up on the screen for those on YouTube to see my face and my mouth in an allergic reaction. They would have shocked you, maybe too much. So my allergist, the doctor says, you probably never need it, but if we can get it at a good price, have it and keep it in your bag as you go to work every day or whatever. So the insurance companies keep playing with prescriptions, right? I remember one time I paid $10 for the EpiPen, the brand. Another time I went in and they said the brand was not covered, but the generic was covered. So this time around, they sent the request for the EpiPen and it wasn't covered. And apparently neither the brand nor the generic was covered. So when my doctor sent the prescription to CVS, CVS reached out to me and said, look, this is not covered by an insurance company. If you want it, we have it waiting here for you. It's $120. I spoke to my doctor, says, in 5 years I never used it. I understand it's a lifesaver, but you've also kind of assured me, because let me jump in there and say, I go every week, I get two allergy shots, one on each arm, every single week. And so they feel the risk is minimal and the real need for an EpiPen with me is very, very low. But if I can get it for the $10 or whatever, why not? So when I told the doctor, CVS at $120, he said, nah, that's too much. He says, well, I see you got Express Scripts on here too. And I've gotten all the medication from Express Scripts. And I kind of been moving all my medications slowly but surely over to Express Scripts for two reasons. One, because I hate the amount of time I have to stand in line at the pharmacy. Every time I go there seems like there's always 10 or 12 people in front of me, no matter when I go. And two, because when the medications are hard to come by, Express Scripts is a nationwide company, so they're able to source medications a lot easier than the local pharmacies. So we said, okay, let's try Express Scripts. See how much they will charge you, because there's many times I've had a prescription go to the CVS and it's one price, and I go to Express Scripts and it's cheaper. So they submitted the prescription to Express Scripts. The same day that I got that bill from Apria, I get a package in the mail. It's the EpiPen, the brand, with a bill for $120. I didn't authorize it. They submitted it, and usually you get back to the patient and say it's not covered. If that's the case, it's $120. So on the same day, the next day when I called Apria, I called Express Scripts. Bottom line is, no sir, we don't do that. If we get a prescription, we just send it. Well, how could you do that? Suppose the prescription was $3,000. Well, sir, we have a threshold of $150. Really? So you think that the average person, lower income, a person who is making minimum wage, who may need the same EpiPen, would be able to afford $120 just like that when they might have another option? Because there are other alternatives to the EpiPen that we're going to explore next. I think one year I had one called Acu something, and it was cheaper. It was like $60 or $40 maybe. But the point is, they just sent it and sent the bill. And of course they say, sir, it's medication, so you can't send it back. So you basically blackmailed me into paying this bill. And if I don't pay the bill, they said, sir, you have 90 days to pay it. But you know what happens if I don't pay the bill, right? It may only be $120, but yes, they will go to a collections company. And she said that to me. Then it goes to collections. So now you get something on your credit file that you didn't pay a bill for $120 for health care. And let's just spend 2 seconds on that. For life-saving health care. Why is an EpiPen not covered by insurance 100%? They cover a lot of other medications 100%. This medication saves lives. Within 3 minutes, if you have a peanut allergy and no EpiPen, you are going to die. But the insurance company doesn't cover it. Why? Because it's life-saving. If you have critical allergies, you have to have it. So why the heck should they cover it? Because most people who have peanut allergies are going to, even if they're poor, even if they're struggling, they're going to pay half the electricity bill or not pay it at all so they can get the EpiPen, because they want to be alive to be able to work to pay the electricity bill, right? I don't know what's going on in healthcare. Now I'm going to tell you the last story real quick, because this went longer than this episode than it was supposed to, but I'm angry. Even now that we pointed out the issue to Apria, I'm angry. Even now I had the conversation with Express Scripts to realize that these people are just money hungry. I'm angry. So I'm going to tell you this last one that really got me angry again. My daughter was ill. I have a young daughter. And she was ill enough that my wife rushed her to City MD, one of the City MD offices. And we had to go there because the health care, the urgent care for our health plan was closed. And we certainly didn't want her to sit at the emergency room for 8 hours. City MD has doctors. Went to City MD. Doctor found out she was really sick. Doctor sent a prescription. My wife rushed over to the pharmacy. The line was massive. She spent almost 1 hour in the line. She got to the front to the pharmacist. They said, "Ma'am, why would they prescribe this medication? No pharmacy has had this medication for almost a year. It's been out of stock." After an hour, my wife was so frustrated, she dropped my daughter back home because my daughter was so ill. Luckily, it was early enough that she raced back over to the city MD. When she got to the receptionist outside the front, the receptionist said, "I don't know why this doctor would have prescribed this medication. All of our doctors get briefed on this almost every day of medications they can't prescribe. And all of us know this is one of them that they can't prescribe because it's not available." So this doctor for this little child who was very ill, I mean, when I say very ill, she had fever to the point she probably could have gone into shock. And it was some sort of infection, I think. And this doctor prescribed the medication, didn't take the care enough on something that they're briefed on every day. And luckily enough, the pharmacy, the pharmacy is 24 hours. The CDMD was still open. And they were able to get the doctor to prescribe another medication. And then my wife had to go back to the pharmacy, stand in line for almost an hour again. And this was a time, I guess, there were a lot of kids who were sick, a lot of people were sick, because the lines were very long. So my child had to wait to be sick, to go to the doctor, to wait in the waiting room, to see the doctor, to go to the pharmacy, to be there miserably with my wife for almost an hour, to find out there's the wrong medication, to get dropped home, to wait at home, my wife to go back to the doctor, find out that she was given the medication she never should have been, to then get the right prescription, to go back to the pharmacy, to spend another almost hour at the pharmacy, to come home to give my child medication when she had blazing hot fever to the point where she was shaking, and even the doctors were worried about her 4 hours ago. That's healthcare for you. Now, I know my listeners out there who are healthcare personnel, and I say I have a few of them, are going to be cringing when I say this. But not only do we need to do better, but the healthcare industry needs to take a certain level of responsibility for patient care. I was able to go through all these 3 instances, and I'm fine. But you've heard me again do episodes about people who have stresses in their life, who end up doing crazy things, including taking their lives because they can't take it anymore. Recently, we've seen 3 or 4 or 5 cases out here in New York where husbands have gone home and taken the lives of their entire family. And it could have been something simply as they're at their rope, they're at their literal end. They can't figure out how to pay their mortgage, their light bill, they're worried with, they're out of oil or they haven't paid the gas, they're concerned they're going to lose heat, they don't know how they're going to feed their family, and here comes this bill from APRI that says you owe us $700. The little things at the end of the rope. Something that was highly preventable in every single case that I've spoken to you about tonight. All 3 cases. But yet we have a multi-billion, multi-trillion dollar healthcare industry that pretends to care about you and me. Doctors who pretend to care. People who work on benefits and giving patients insurance so they can get medication, pretending to care, but not caring enough to do simple due diligence that can not only make a process go right the first time, but can remove the stress and pain and discomfort and unhappiness from people who are already in the middle of a society that has dealt with COVID, that has dealt with economic stresses, that has dealt with people of color, have dealt with prejudices, that have dealt with financial crisis, that have started repaying student loans. There is a mounting on top of the minds of the people. This has to end. If you're in the healthcare industry purely for profit, it's not the place for you. And those who are in it for the right reasons need to stand up and put those who are not on blast. So if you have stories, if you have stories of your suffering, you can send them to me. My email is podcast@247realtalk.net. Podcast@247realtalk.net. I want to hear, because I will come right back in this episode and I will tell the world about your story. And I will name whatever names you authorize me to name. It's time for a change. We're fighting too many battles as citizens, as human beings who are just trying to live. We're fighting monetary battles, economic battles, prejudices and racism, political battles with this awful political climate. And now we're living in a society where there's so many things that can get us sick. And we're just trying to survive, to live another day, to take care of our families and our children. This should not be our experience. Enough is enough. Please do share this episode. Get others to subscribe. Let's start a bigger conversation. Those medical personnel are out there. I'm all equipped now. If you want to call in and be on the show and either defend the medical industry or talk about it, let's talk. Send me an email and I'll have you on the show. We got to start somewhere. And it's right here at 247 Real Talk Podcast. As always, it's my pleasure to speak with you. I get even more energized when I can share my personal experiences, because this is not he said, she said. This is I said. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you, to share these experiences. Hopefully it resonates with many of you who are fighting the same struggle. If you are, let's come together. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out a way to help you like I was able to help me. It is my absolute pleasure. I'm humbled by the number of subscribers that continues to increase. And for those of you who are listening to the audio only, and I know there's a lot more volume in the audio only, but I invite you to come onto the YouTube version to big it up, to build it up, and we can talk face to face. Thanks again so much. Do have a great weekend and a great week ahead. And until the next time, please take care of yourselves and each other.